This is a PC I built almost 2 months ago, and yeah, it's about as boring as it gets. The exterior is seriously worn down, the front panel is completely missing, and honestly, I have no idea how that even happened. Gaming performance? Pretty bad. And that's exactly why this video exists. Today, I'm turning this neglected system into a real gaming PC, pushing its performance as far as it can possibly go. To make that happen, I spent around $300 on the strongest upgrades this machine can handle. So, let's stop talking about how bad it was, and start turning this thing into what it should have been from the start. As you can see, the entire front panel was gone, and honestly, it looked like a PC that had already been abandoned. But for this upgrade, my goal wasn't just performance anymore, it had to look good too. So I decided this PC deserved a brand new outfit. After digging around for a bit, I remembered I still had a few unused cases lying around, and this one is easily one of my favorites. It has 2 glass panels. Well, technically 1, because the other one didn't survive an unlucky day. What I really like about this case is how it shows off the components from multiple angles, instead of locking everything into that boring, boxed-in look. So I pulled the motherboard out and moved everything into the new case. And that's when the problem started. None of the mounting holes on the case lined up with my motherboard. At that point, I didn't really have a choice. I removed all the existing standoffs, placed the motherboard exactly where I wanted it, marked every hole, and drilled new ones myself. It's actually not that hard. You just need to remember one rule: drill smaller than the screw. In the end, the result was pretty solid. The motherboard sits firmly in place and feels secure. The downside? I had to sacrifice the front I/O completely. Yeah, it kinda hurts. But honestly, I'd rather lose front ports than stare at that ugly old case every single day. Sure, I could shove it under the desk, but that's just not my style. Since there was still plenty of empty space at the top of the case, I decided to add 2 intake fans to improve airflow. I don't think this system is going to run that hot, but honestly, it just makes the case look way better. Then I realized another issue. This is an OEM motherboard, which means no I/O shield. So yeah, I'm basically just praying that no insects decide to fly inside while the PC is running. That would be the fastest way to turn a bug into a flying piece of conductive metal. And just like that, the PC officially moved into its new home. The case normally goes for about $64, but since mine is missing a glass panel, I picked it up for around $40 instead. Which honestly, I'll take any day. Next up is the power supply, and honestly, this part had me thinking for a while. It's a 240-watt unit, so I'm not giving up on it anytime soon. I'm confident it can still handle a high TDP CPU and a GPU that doesn't need external power. Then I noticed one more problem. This power supply doesn't have any Molex connectors to power the LED fans, so I made a small compromise. I tapped into the SATA power line instead. It doesn't affect the hard drive at all, and in return, I get fully working LED fans and a system that actually looks good while staying cool. Removing it and transferring it into the new case was actually pretty easy. But as you can see, this PSU was never meant to sit in this position, which leaves a pretty big empty gap. Functionally, that gap doesn't cause any problems, but my eyes absolutely refuse to accept it. So yeah, I grabbed a piece of cardboard and cut it to fill the space. I know, like I can already hear the comments, this is strictly a temporary solution, so I'm not over-engineering it. But if you're planning to do something similar, please use a proper rigid material. Cardboard can be a fire hazard if something goes wrong with the power supply. For now though, I gave it a quick coat of paint so it blends in a bit better. And at least visually, it does the job. Next up is RAM, and this is where things get a little interesting. Even though this motherboard uses socket 1151, it actually runs DDR3, not DDR4. And honestly, that makes total sense. When 1151 first launched, DDR4 was still expensive and not very common. So motherboard manufacturers released DDR3 compatible models to let people reuse older memory and save some cash. Back then, that was a smart move. And weirdly enough, it's kind of a smart move again today. With DDR4 and DDR5 prices going absolutely crazy right now, people are starting to look back at DDR3 as a budget lifesaver, a last resort option for wallets that are barely hanging on. It's not fast by modern standards, but it's cheap, available, and it works. For this build, I picked up 2 8GB DDR3 sticks for about $28, giving me a full 16GB, which is still perfectly usable for gaming and everyday tasks in 2026. Originally, this system was running an i5 6400, and yeah, it's honestly pretty weak when it comes to modern games. So the upgrade path was obvious. I swapped it out for an i7 6700, which is basically the strongest CPU you can realistically run on this socket. It's still rated at just 65 watts, so power draw stays reasonable and heat output isn't too crazy either. Because of that, I didn't need anything extreme for cooling. I went with a Thermalright air cooler with 4 heat pipes, which cost me about $18 and is more than enough for this chip. The best part? The fan header isn't proprietary, so swapping coolers was completely painless. Alright, we're basically done upgrading this thing. And now we're at the most expensive part of the whole build, the GPU. To get the best performance without turning my tiny power supply into a fire hazard, I'm going with an RTX 3056GB. It only pulls about 70 watts, so I'm not stressing about power. And at $150, it was honestly the only card I found that made sense for this setup. Next up, storage. SSD prices have been creeping up again, so I'm keeping it simple. A 500GB Samsung 2.5-inch SATA SSD for $45. So all in, we've spent about $316 upgrading this machine. And yeah, just looking at it now, it's already a completely different vibe compared to the boring office PC it used to be. But there's one more problem. The power switch connector is proprietary, and I tried a few different workarounds to replace it, but none of them worked. But the real question is, was it actually worth the money? Let's find out. Time to jump into the game tests. I checked everything in CPU-Z, and yep, everything lines up perfectly. The i7-6700 is running with 4 cores and 8 threads, scoring 445 in single-core and 2138 in multi-core, which honestly isn't bad at all for a chip this old. Starting with a CPU-heavy game, the processor gets absolutely pinned at 100% load, but the result is surprisingly good. FPS stays rock solid at around 100 FPS, often bouncing up to 120 FPS. Moving on to Minecraft, even at 32 chunks, FPS is still over 200 most of the time, with occasional dips to around 150 FPS. Still very impressive. In CS2, I'm consistently seeing triple-digit FPS, hovering around 120 FPS on medium settings, which makes it totally playable and smooth for competitive games. Now for the real stress test, I switched to 1440p, 2K, and fired up some heavier titles, starting with Cyberpunk 2077 on medium settings. And honestly, it holds up. FPS sits close to 60, which is very playable. But you can tell the GPU is working hard to stay there. So far, this combo is holding its ground better than I expected. After testing games at 1080p, I was actually pretty happy with the results. Performance in FPS titles was solid, and the CPU-GPU balance felt just right. But once I switched to heavier, more graphics-intensive games or pushed the resolution up to 1440p, the limits of the RTX 3056GB became very obvious. So I went a little crazy again. I spent an extra $250 and upgraded to an RTX 3060 12GB, replacing the 3050. Of course, that also meant the old power supply was no longer going to cut it. So I didn't hesitate to drop another $50 on a 700-watt Cooler Master PSU. There was one more catch, though. This motherboard uses an 8-pin proprietary power connector. So to make everything work, I had to use a 24-pin to 8-pin adapter. Not ideal, but it gets the job done. Now that everything's installed, it's time for the real question. Can this CPU actually keep up with an RTX 3060? Let's rerun the tests, this time with graphically demanding games at 1440p, and see what this system is really capable of. In Cyberpunk 2077 on medium settings, you can really see a better balance between the CPU and the GPU. FPS sits around 50, not quite hitting 60, but honestly that doesn't make me think less of it at all. The CPU stays rock solid with no major drops, even when cruising through dense, visually complex areas of the city. Switching over to GTA 5 on very high settings, the story changes a bit. Here, the GPU is clearly the bottleneck, pinned at 100% usage almost the entire time. If I were to drop the graphics down a notch, I'm pretty sure the experience would become noticeably smoother. But even as it is, it's still playable. After burning through pretty much the last of my budget on this PC, I can confidently say the performance payoff is real. This machine can now handle most modern games at 1440 without falling apart. Hopefully you enjoyed this build as much as I did, and if you want to support the channel, don't forget to grab some merch.